I got a new posting, which of course thrilled me to bits, onto a mosquito squadron at Benson. And I was very much envied by all the rest of the squadron because I'd been picked out for the mosquitoes. It was the fastest aircraft in the Air Force at the time. And it turned out it was a PRU, Photographic Reconnaissance Unit. And I teamed up with a New Zealand pilot, Freddie Mackay, and I did about 20 ops with him. The last one was over Austria, and we had engine trouble, and we had to cut one of the engines out and fly home on one, try and get home on one engine. I was a little below Mac. He was up in the pilot seat on the left. I was on his right, just a little below him, because I used to go forward into the nose of the mosquito when we were taking photographs. I was the camera operator and navigator and did my navigation from the nose of the aircraft. And of course I was a wireless operator as well. And we sent a message home from before we bailed out and told them, and they have records of that message. And I sent them a message. It was December the 8th, and I sent them a message in plain English because my Morse wasn't all that good, and I said, "Merry Christmas." And they didn't get that message. They didn't know what it was. We didn't understand it. I had to explain later on, years later, what it was I sent. That was quite funny. We got as far as Belgium, which was a long way, but we ran out of petrol. So Mac, being the sort of bloke he was, said, "You get out and try and get away, and I'll take the plane on," because it was still flying. And then he jumped out eventually, and the plane crashed in Belgium. We didn't have any training. We were told how to pull the ripcord and count to 10, and that was it. And when I jumped out, we'd got a bit low because we had lost height all the way back. And when we got over Belgium and Max said, "You bail out," I shook hands with him, bailed out, but I didn't count to 10, I counted to 3 and then pulled the ripcord. Extraordinary thing, because 1 minute you're in an aircraft full of noise, engine noise, and next minute you're in silence, drifting down under this parachute, which was quite exciting, really. It didn't bother me. It was about 5:30 in the evening, a December evening, so it was pretty dark, getting dusk, you know. I couldn't see the ground until I got very close to it, but it was quite cloudy and dark. Extraordinary when you come down by parachute, the noises you can hear. Dogs barking, and you could see a few odd lights about because everybody wasn't quite as conscious of blackouts as we were, and it was quite extraordinary. In fact, I think I heard traffic or a train whistle or something. It's all dead quiet up there. You're floating down. It's rather a nice sensation. I wouldn't mind doing another one. I landed quite easily, no problems there. Hid the parachute in a hedge, looked around to see if there was anybody about, and there wasn't. A few cows in the field. So I got out of the field and I saw a light in a shed in a farmhouse. And I approached it very gingerly and looked in the door, and there was a farmer and his wife milking the cows. This would be about 5:30 in the evening, winter's evening, it was December. And it was nearly dark, not quite. And I went in and said who I was. I said, "Did you hear the plane go overhead?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I just jumped out of it." I explained this in French. I had enough French to explain that. And I know the first thing she did was offer me a drink of cow's milk that they'd just, and I thought, well, this is a good sign anyway, so they're on my side. So then I said I'd like to get to Brussels, because I knew Brussels. I'd visited it before the war with my family. And they said, well, you need to go to Enghien, where there's a railway station, you see. I said, which way is Enghien? So they pointed it out, and I set off walking. Of course, it was getting dark then. And I had some, what they called, escape boots on. you could cut the top of them off, and then they looked like shoes. So I did that and left them. And the farmer's wife wanted to know where the parachute was, you see. She was interested in the silk. And the farmer said, no, leave it there, we'll find it in the morning. He said, you never know who might be looking for it, might have seen it come down, you see. So I left then and set off walking, and I walked most of the night.
So what else did you have in the way of escape kit that had been issued by
I had a little compass, I had a little saw, I had a silk map. It was like a handkerchief, but it had a map on it of Europe. I had some Belgian, French, and I think German coins. We all had a few coins. And we had a little escape food kit. It had, I think it was some kind of food tablets in it and chocolate. And I'd eaten that, of course. I found, oh yeah, and it was lit up very much with, it was German occupied. And I didn't want to go into the town at night, so I found myself a little outside toilet outside a cottage, and I spent the night there. Next morning I went into the little town and had a drink of beer and decided it was getting very light and a lot of people were about. I better get out of town. So I wandered out of town and I found a railway crossing. And there was a young girl outside and she was hanging out some clothes, and I went up to her and told her who I was, RAF, and she got very frightened, ran inside, brought her brother out, and he said, come in, and we'll see what we can do. And they gave me civilian clothes, a beret to wear, and I left my uniform top with them, and they gave me some food, of course, and I then went down to the local railway station, and they told me what to say, and I had some money and I bought a ticket to Brussels. So I got the train to Brussels, spent the day wandering around Brussels. Eventually I knew Brussels from before the war. My mother had been born in Belgium, would you believe, and I had a little bit of French. So if I hadn't had the French, I'd have been probably picked up very, very quickly, you know, but I had enough French to get by. I could go in a cafe and order a beer, and I bought a newspaper and sat reading, pretending to read a French newspaper, you know. And and in Brussels, of course, I just merged with the crowds. I walked around Brussels and I got very tired, and I eventually bought a ticket to a theatre. I went in the theatre and fell asleep up in the gallery. Had a good sleep in the theatre until the play was over, and then I went out with the rest of the crowd and wandered about, and I was getting a bit nervous then of how to spend the night. I asked to go to a certain part of Brussels that I knew, and I forgot that, of course, the Belgian trams ran on the opposite side of the road. They went on the right-hand side and we went on the left, and I got on a tram going the wrong way. I went entirely the different direction to what I wanted to go. Anyway, I realised this, got off the tram at a big square in Brussels and found a little estaminet or cafe, and went in, asked for a beer, and the woman said, "You are not Belgian?" I said, "No, I'm Dutch." So she started speaking to me in Dutch. That flummoxed me completely, so I owned up. I said, "No, I'm RAF." She said, "Oh, God," and sort of got very frightened, and she said, "Go and sit down over there," she said, and at the table, and I'll bring you something to eat. And my son-in-law will be in shortly. So I said, right. We sat down, had my soup, and her son-in-law came in, Maurice. She introduced me to him. He took me over to his flat on the other side of the square, and I spent the night there. And the next day he took me to his mother and father-in-law, it was. His mother had married again. And they kept me in an upstairs room in their apartment for a month. I spent Christmas there, New Year, until they got in touch with the Comet line. How they did it, I don't know, I didn't inquire. But I got very, very friendly with them and comfortable with them. Used to go out with Maurice to parties. went to the cinema, went to a football match at Anderlecht, nearly forgot myself and shouted corner one time and they said shh. And that was quite funny, but anyway we got away with it.